It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's caught! Touchdown! Stayed inside the boundary and gets in for 6.
Cougar Sports Saturday, a presentation of KSL Sports.
Ritchie right to the rim, driving score! He would not be denied!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Sponsored by Any Hour Services, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me. And believe it or not, they really do make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for talking and preparing me for what's ahead.
Thank you for talking.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Got to be exciting times right now for East Carolina.
There's no doubt. I think a lot of people have been looking forward to this game for some time. I mean, East Carolina has kind of gained a reputation really over its history for, getting up for these types of games, and getting a chance to host BYU is a big deal, especially with the way college football is going. I think teams in the American teams in the group of five are getting less of these opportunities. So in some ways, it was kind of hard not to look ahead to this game when it was announced as a 7:30 kickoff going into Coastal Carolina last week. I thought the team did a good job of, taking care of business at Coastal. They've already played in a big game this year at NC State, which is their in-state rival. Came up short in that one, so I think they're glad to get this one at home. And the last time BYU came here, really both programs were, at least for that season, in pretty bad shape. So at least to start this year, both teams seem to be trending in the right direction. I think it should make for a fun atmosphere and what hopefully should be a really good game on Saturday night in Greenville.
Yeah, that's such a great point. That last visit to Greenville, I think ECU had the worst defense in college football. BYU had the worst offense in college football, and ECU still came out on top in that one. But these two, they've had close calls. The ones in Provo, ECU had a 14-0 lead and then tied it up, and then they had a last-second field goal, a walk-off 3 years ago in Provo. So I expect another good one here on Saturday. I'm curious, Blake Harrell, he's 7-2 as the head coach. Stephen, what's worked so well for Coach Harrell compared to some of those past coaches that we were just talking about of, Scotty Montgomery and those recent coaches the past decade? What's worked so well for Coach Harrell?
Coach Harrell, he is just such a down-to-earth, relatable guy. I mean, he really, he's worked at Lenoir-Rhyne, the Citadel, Kennesaw State, and ECU, so he's never had like some big glamorous job. In East Carolina, it's kind of a blue-collar university. It is a very big public state university, but like it's just kind of known for being blue-collar, and kind of overachieving. And Blake, he just feels like that type of coach in many ways, like a guy that is just a very, very active with the fans, just does a great job of interacting with them, getting on their good side. And it's not even fake. Like some coaches, you can always feel, they're kind of going over the top. They're not being themselves when they're doing that sort of stuff. Well, Blake's just a regular dude, like a guy you can just sit down and have a conversation with just about anybody. And the other side of it too is he's a player's coach. He was obviously the defensive coordinator under Mike Houston since 2020, and then Mike Houston was fired midway through last year. He took over in a pretty rough situation, and I think he would even admit probably a little bit over his head at the time, but just said, all right, guys, we're going to do this for the seniors. We're going to find a way to get these guys to a bowl game. Everybody bought in. He was very real with the players. He was real with the media. He was real with the fans. And I think people just respected how upfront and real he is. And as a result, he's got buy-in from everybody. He's won the games that ECU should have won on paper. He got a big bowl win over NC State last year. They've competed well in every game since he became head coach. And he's a defensive-minded guy. So They're pretty unorthodox defensively. They do a bunch of crazy stuff, even with a new defensive coordinator coming in, and Josh Aldridge. There's a lot of similarities, and it's aggressive style. He goes for it on fourth down. He kind of plays with that house money mentality and quite a bit. They blitz a lot. They also do some pretty crazy things offensively at times. They faked a punt from their own 19 in the opener against NC State. So he's not afraid to roll the dice. At times it works, at times it doesn't. But that's the type of mentality that has kind of always led to success at ECU. Just kind of that chip on your shoulder, house money, like we're the underdog type of mentality. And historically, that's when they're at their best. And it feels like Blake has kind of brought some of that back.
Talk with Stephen Igoe of Hoist the Colors, part of the 24/7 Sports Network here on KSL News Radio and KSL Sports. I'm curious, Coach Harrell's with that defensive background, as you noted, seemed like coming into this season, maybe on paper, only 2 returning starters. Maybe that was going to be an area of question, but shutout on the road, first one in 25 years for this Pirates team, seems like maybe ahead of schedule from maybe what expectations were coming in on defensively.
I mean, definitely. The question going into the year, I mean, all the questions were around the defense. And it's, we were kind of joking on my show on Monday, like it's kind of crazy that all we talked about all preseason, because we were out of practice, man. And the offense was torching the defense. And maybe some of that was just the familiarity. They knew what scheme, what plays they're running. And, even dating back to the spring, we were like, man, this might be a long year. But it just feels like they've hit on many of the guys. We make such a big deal about the portal these days, and they have hit on some portal guys who have added specifically at corner and some depth at linebacker and along the defensive front. But like for the most part, a lot of these guys that are kind of coming out of their shell, so to speak, are guys who have developed the old fashioned way. Solid 3-star recruit. He redshirts, he stays with the program a year or two, and now like a lot of these guys are redshirt sophomores or redshirt juniors who have been in the program 2-3 years. They've been kind of developing in Blake Harrell's defense, kind of waiting their time. So that was another benefit of just promoting the interim coach to full-time. Like you had a decent amount of continuity. The problem was we had just never seen those guys play a full-time role. So now that they're on the field, a lot of these assistant defensive coaches recruited them, they developed them, so they know how to utilize them best. And they play a ton of guys defensively. I wouldn't really say there's many stars out there. The one guy is probably safety, Jamarlee Riddle. He's a really good player. But outside of that, it's like you just got a lot of guys who know how to do their job, and they kind of come at you in waves, whether it be blitzing, whether it be different coverages. They mix it up quite a bit.
Offensively, it seems like the tempo they go pretty fast. They're top 20 in seconds per play. On this offense, Katin Hauser at quarterback. Just maybe your overarching thoughts of the offense so far through 3 weeks, and Hauser returning and being a key piece of all of it.
Yeah, Katin, he transferred in from Michigan State last year. He was a guy that I expected him to win the job. I mean, he was the first guy to commit. He just seemed like he was fully bought in. Then they add Jake Garcia, another former big recruit. He won the job initially, and it just didn't work out. He turned the ball over too many times. Katin took over midseason. That kind of coincided with Blake getting the head job, and those two guys, along with offensive coordinator John David Baker, who's in his second year calling plays, have kind of seen this thing take off. And I think, look, anytime you've got that up-tempo, fast-paced offense, in many cases the strength is the passing game. They are, pretty good at receiver. Anthony Smith, Yannick Smith are your two outside guys. They've rotated quite a bit in the slot. Brock Spalding has been a nice surprise this year, and they feel pretty good 2-3 deep at receiver. Tight end, they really have two weapons at tight end. In my opinion, Javante Connor, Desir Riles are two of the most athletic tight ends ECU's had in the last several years. The running game is definitely, I would say, the concern at this point. I mean, you look at it, they've run for a pretty high total the last 2 weeks, but you kind of didn't really see them pop the runs until late. And a lot of that is due to the tempo. And it's kind of what they did the last half of last year. They go so fast. At times, if they get rolling, teams in the second half start to wear down a bit. And that's when you see the running game start to pop off. So that's when they're at their best. They're using that tempo. They're hitting the horizontal passing game. And then they'll take shots downfield, which Katin, since he took the job, I would say one of his strengths are those downfield passes. But to be honest, through 3 games, they haven't hit a lot of those vertical passing plays, and they've hit more underneath stuff. So it'll be interesting to see, what BYU tries to take away Does ECU try to hit some big passing plays early? Do they stick with kind of the short game, the medium game? Can they protect versus BYU? Can they run the ball? So I think the question marks are still the running game. The offensive line at times has been hit or miss, but they certainly have some weapons out wide.
To kind of follow up on that, again, talk with Stephen Igoe here for a few more moments, getting to know the foe, East Carolina. What are some areas of focus that you're looking at with this? You follow this ECU team as close as anyone. What are some things that you're looking to see from this group in this matchup against BYU?
I really am curious, man. Like the BYU, we know the defense is just so good, and they're so big up front and physical. ECU is just not going to be able to line up and run the ball at them. I mean, I'm sure there will be, you can't only just play East and West, so they're going to have to try to run the ball. But how much can they get into a rhythm? So much of this offense is, hey, if they're ahead of the chains, they can go to their tempo, they can do all that, they can stay on schedule, and then at times that can wear on the defense. But a BYU, if they're forcing ECU to hold them to create penalties, if they're stopping the run and then making it 2nd and 11, 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, that's when ECU can get into trouble. So really, to me, ECU is good on third down when they're in third and medium, like most offenses, but especially this offense. If BYU is able to stop them on 1st and 2nd down, put them in 3rd and long, I don't think that's a recipe for success for the Pirates. And the other thing defensively for the Pirates is, you're facing obviously Bear Bachmeier, first road start. If ECU can stop the run and put him into 3rd and long situations where he has to go through his progressions, how does he react to that in his first road start as a freshman? So if you're ECU, you want to put him in those situations, see how he responds. And if he goes out and completes some tight window throws, then maybe you have to adjust as the game goes along. But really the first quarter for me, I think we'll be able to get a pretty good feel for maybe how the chess match is going to play out throughout the evening inside Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium. Do
you think Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium is going to be sold out, and will it be painted gold as they're hoping?
I was texting some administrators on Monday, and they're expecting at least a crowd in the mid to high 40s. The student pickup is happening Tuesday, Wednesday, so they'll really know then. It's family weekend as well. So what happens is a lot of the students, they'll bring their siblings, their parents, and so it's kind of hard. And ECUs are, really big school as far as student enrollment. So it's one of those things where they won't really know the full number until the student pickup starts to happen. There is a chance it gets to that 50K mark, which I don't think has happened since the NC State opener at home in 2022. They had 45,000 plus for App State last year, which was a fun environment. But I think they'll be right there. As far as painted gold, I don't know. ECU, they tend to play well in these spots at home. Even in Scotty Montgomery's tenure, they beat North Carolina at home when they were quite frankly terrible. They've had success against in-state foes. BYU obviously a little bit different, being a long way across the country. But I know ECU will be up for this game, and then it comes down to, as you know, execution. I think if this was on a neutral field, BYU has more talent across the board, specifically in the trenches. And that's my biggest question, is how much can ECU find a way to neutralize that? How much can they, put Bear Bachmeier in spots that potentially he's never been in at the college level and see how he responds to that? And then you kind of take your shot with that in a tough environment.
He's Stephen Igoe, publisher of Hoist the Colors on the 24/7 Sports Network. And you can check out his radio show, 94.3 The Game, Hoist the Colors. Go on podcast. It's available anywhere. Good stuff throughout the week to follow the Pirates, so BYU fans can get to know the foe at an even deeper level. Stephen, thanks for the time. Looking forward to being out there in Greenville for the first time, and should be a lot of fun. It's going to be a good game.
Appreciate it so much, Mitch. And I'll say again, my 2022 trip to BYU was one of the best games I've ever covered. And I hope ECU fans can, treat BYU fans as well as they treated the Pirates then, and, great hospitality. So looking forward to it, and hopefully the Pirates can make it a fun game on Saturday.
And that was East Carolina insider Stephen Igoe here on KSL News Radio. He just walked into the press box here at Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium. So we'll have more BYU East Carolina extended pregame here on KSL News Radio.